I was actually going to put off the first episode until I'd been to the gym, but what a lot of us tend to do is always put off that thing that we know we have to get done for what we want to do right now. So I thought, bugger it, I'm going to get in the office, I'm going to sit down and just explain a bit about who I am and what has motivated me to want to start a podcast. So I'm forever listening to them first and foremost. I am in the gym every day and just listening to a couple of different ones, but I find myself getting more and more in their world and interested in who they are as people and what motivates them. So the way I've been able to do that and how I ended up where I am in this day and age was from way back when I was a child. So I remember sitting in the back of a year 10 math class and sitting there thinking, I'm going to deliberately fail high school so I can show people who can't succeed at school that they can still succeed in life. And my life has sort of come full circle back to that space where I am now helping people create more time freedom in their own lives. And that is what I really wanted to share with you. And I thought, you know what, I should be sitting down, dressed up, to present as I would on camera, on a podcast, to an audience, to be professional. It's that thing that I've always had in the back of my head, you always want to look the part. My grandmother always said, you want to dress your best in case you get hit by a bus. You don't want to be caught in dirty underwear or something to that effect. But over the last 10 years, particularly in print on demand, I've been able to sell close to $10 million worth of print on demand products. I could have doubled down and built businesses and whatnot, but the truth or what I always wanted to be able to do was create that time freedom in my life. I always believed that we didn't have to go to this 9 to 5 to make enough money to actually succeed or be able to live a comfortable life. It just never sat well with me. Even when I was at school, the 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I was like, it just seems so wrong that we're in this cage for so long. And being a child and looking back on that and knowing that that wasn't for me was probably the most pivotal thing. And despite having sold close to $10 million worth of print-on-demand product over that time, the driving light and how I ended up with doing print-on-demand, which is, if you don't know, is where somebody else takes care of the inventory. It's a style of e-commerce where somebody takes care of the printing and the packaging of that order, sending it straight to your customer. So what I'm left to do is come up with the design, market it to a target niche or market, and from the sales you make, you live profitably or aim to live profitably at least. And luckily and thankfully, over the last few years, in the last 10 years, I've been doing it full time. And what's led me to that, I was a carpenter. So I'm a carpenter by trade. I did that for 7 years, went through the carpentry apprenticeship, started subcontracting, always on the phone, dealing with builders, trying to find where the work was going to come from, and always chasing invoices after the work had been done. And what I found was, after 3 years on the tools, working for myself, I was spending far too long away from home. And, I was leaving the house about 4:30, 5 o'clock to get to site. By 6:30, I was traveling from the Sunshine Coast to Gympie, which is about an hour and a half. It was outside of Gympie, closer to Kooran Cove, if you know the area. But anyway, we had our son, my wife and I, and he was 6 months old, and I just knew there was another way. I'd always done the carpentry thing because my dad had always said, get a trade behind you and you'll always have work. Now, I didn't always want work. That was very much what he wanted for me. He wanted me to have that security. And that's what I find with so many people that I speak to, is that it's their family that want them to stay on the straight and narrow, on the job, and keep the security in their own life. But I knew there was another way, and I drew the line in the sand. I was like, this is not for me. I was only seeing my son for half an hour every day, and I had to do something about that. I couldn't be driving, spending so much of the day away, never seeing him actually, achieve the milestones or be there as a kid. So growing up in the caravan park that my father owned, I was incredibly lucky to always have my dad there. He just was never present. Like, because we lived on site, there was the office at the front of the house with the canteen that the people from the caravan park would come and buy stuff. He was always around, but just never present. He never came to different activities at school. He never came to holidays. He never had a holiday with us. I think there was only one time in my whole life that he went on holidays. And by the time I'd left, like, it was a country town out in rural Queensland. By the time I'd finished school, I knew that I had to get out of town and go and do my own thing. Which at the time, I thought I was going to be a model or on TV. So I went and did a bit of training in and around there and didn't succeed. So then I went into the carpentry after Dad encouraged me to do that. But my guiding light, and why I'm sharing this with you, is because that desire that there was a way to make money that didn't require me to be away from my family or away from my life so much that it was detrimental and I wasn't getting any enjoyment out of my life. It was really just me leaning into that feeling, that deep sense that I need to find a way to make money in the shortest amount of time possible so that I can, go to the gym, spend time with the family. Game at the time, I was into, it was Call of Duty or whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to have a lot more balance in my life. I didn't want to be answering to anybody. I have always disliked having a boss, which thankfully over the past 15 years, I've not had one. And that, led me through e-commerce, into print on demand, into coaching, that kind of stuff, to where I am now. And that desire has always been, I work in the time that the kids are at school, and outside of that, I spend my time with them. And my sole goal, what makes me successful as a person, is not a big bank account. Whilst that is nice, what I want is to make sure that my kids want to hang out with me when they're my age. I want to have that family. I've always envisioned having a nice house where the kids come and go. They have their friends come over and they want to come to our place because that's where they just want to be. They want that environment. Now, I'm not always the best parent. Probably 9 times out of 10, I feel like I'm doing the worst job I could be doing. Very reactive, high expectations, wanting them to do their own things, achieve better results, whatever it is, hold themselves to a higher standard. But the reason I shared that with you is because I do hold myself to a high standard, despite feeling that I don't put in enough work in the office. I do have incredibly high standards. I'm very disciplined. I'm going to the gym every single day. I follow, I know how many calories I'm having every day. So I've got a trainer that keeps me accountable to that as well. I have my own coaches because they keep me on track, and that's what I want. But this podcast is really about conversations and leaning into what has kept other people going, what has kept them focused. I will always call a spade. I will be raw. I will ask difficult questions. I will share hard things. And the mindset challenges that I'm always coming up against myself, the imposter syndrome that I always feel. I've not had the businesses and had $1 million exits and that kind of thing. But what I have had is freedom. And it's what I continue to have. And that's always been my guide. I will not sacrifice that freedom with a business. I don't care what it is. I never assume that just because a business has been built and the people that were doing it were spending 16 to 18 hour days, 7 days a week doing it, that I need to do that. It's leverage points. It's being able to spot where in that business I need to focus in order to get the maximum bang for the buck. And that's what I hope to share with you through the conversations that I have, zeroing in on where people have found their own success. Because the people that I speak to will be successful in their own right, whether it's authoring a book or running a business or competing in a bodybuilding show or whatever it is. They've found their success. And that comes from focus. Focus is not easy. And whilst we listen to podcasts and hear all the success of all these different people and where they're at, and that they're on these massive pillars where people want to talk to them, every one of them has been through significant challenge in their life. Huge challenges. When I first started in e-commerce, way back in 2010, when I drew that line in the sand, my father had recently died from a stroke. He was 68. It was Alzheimer's. He'd been in a nursing home for a couple of years. His brother died 67, 68 with Alzheimer's. My grandfather died at 68 with Alzheimer's. So it's rife in the family, and which is why it puts a massive focus for me on health and fitness to maintain that healthy lifestyle. They were big drinkers. I'm not a big drinker. Whilst I love whiskey and wines and that kind of thing, I'm not big into that. But I've lost my train of thought now. And that's another thing that I'll do. I'll continually go between different things. But my goal is to share with you that there is another way, that you can, struggle through and still succeed. Because I deliberately failed high school to show that you can still succeed in life, so much of what we see in this day and age is the desire to want, consumable products. The big brands, the Gucci's, Pradas, the fast cars. We are constantly bombarded with these messages of that is what wealth is. And whilst it's nice to have them, I've never had them and I won't have them for some time. I'm not going to get them through sacrificing my time with my family, my time on my health and fitness. There are priorities that need to be put in place before I get there. I'm 40 years of age. I'm not getting any younger. I've just started jiu-jitsu, and I tell you what, an hour doing that, I felt alive, that's for sure. So what I was saying before about when I started e-commerce back in 2010, it was difficult. Initially, it was the old school type of e-commerce. I'd spent a lot of money on the website to get started, and I got the warehouse. I got the website built. I had the office equipment. I thought I had to do everything super, super professionally. And I always set out with the customer first mentality. So I was huge on social media and building connection with people. And it's something that I still love to do today, is connect with people. But through that process, so I had it for about 12, 18 months. And I saw, some success through that time. The first week of launching, I'd done over $10,000 in sales, which I thought at the time was very, very good. Particularly, I'd been on the phone to hundreds of suppliers, and I have to list every single product on that website, and it took hours. And I thought I was doing it to find freedom. I found anything but freedom with that. But I met a lot of interesting people, very, very cool people. And I've still got connections that I made back then that I'm connected with today. And that's very cool. But what happened is I went through, getting the information memorandum together, which is a info packet that you get together before you get investors on board, because I really wanted to scale up. And I'd reached out to different e-commerce platforms around Australia in the same vertical, in the same industry. I was in the baby and maternity niche. They were in the big broad category of everything. I reached out, and the way I reached out, I was like, okay, I know their web address. So I literally just Googled who the founders of these companies were and just went, ab@x.com, and went through, what their name and variations could be. And one of them hit, and one of them responded to me saying that they would like to catch up and to meet them in Brisbane. And so I did, and went through that process. So we ended up having 4, 5, 6 meetings. I was invited to Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Awards in Sydney. Not that I was nominated by any means. I was a guest of someone that had been nominated. And the person I went with, they won their category. And then this other website that was looking to acquire my company had also won. So that evening was a big party. Anyway, all signs were pointing to it being this awesome thing that was going to happen. You know, I was going to get incredible shipping rates for my site. I was going to have the people working on the website, getting the brands on there. I thought I was set. I thought I was about to have my biggest payday ever. Anyway, final phone call, and he's reading the information memorandum, and he goes, "Oh, so you're on track to do $1.5 million this year." And I was like, no, that's post-acquisition. And he's like, oh, okay, I need to run my numbers again. And he hung up, and I didn't hear from him again. And that was the end of that story. But what happened was, you know, very quickly after that, I ran out of steam or got burnt out because I was working big hours, big pressure, lots of debt mounting up. And I ended up over $100,000 in debt from this business. And over the next 2 to 3 years was a true baptism of fire. It must be the entrepreneurial baptism of fire. I never, ever gave up. I never allowed myself to go bankrupt, and I'm quite proud of that. I was like, I need to pay back the suppliers that paid me or allowed me to get access to their products and sell them before they got paid. I did not want to go bankrupt and leave them high and dry. So I did the credit card shuffle. I went from interest-free period to interest-free period, just getting a new credit card. Wasn't smart. My wife, bless her soul, you know, she put up with some pretty stressful days. And for her to stick by me when I was getting called day and night, constantly from these no-caller IDs of suppliers, of debt collectors, solicitors chasing me for money, and me not going back to work because I believed there was a bigger payday online. I was over $100,000 in debt. I did not ever see myself being able to go back to work and being able to pay off that debt. I knew big money existed out there. I just had to find the way. And that's what I set about doing. And despite having this monkey on my back and those phone calls coming through, I held that belief. And that's how I ended up being in print on demand, was I'd seen people making incredible money from Facebook advertising and coming up with funny slogans and putting them on shirts. I was like, I thought it was pretty skeptical at first. I saw it and I was like, that's a scam. You know, as a lot of people do when you're not in that world, you don't believe that these numbers are possible. But because I knew big money was out there, I was like, something was telling me not to dismiss it. And it took me a little bit, but over the next month or two, I started seeing more and more information come through about print on demand that made me go, you know what? I'm actually going to take a look at this. And, you know, what money I could find. And I managed to find a business partner in that time, and incredibly grateful for having met him. We had an amazing business relationship for many years. And it was very fortunate that we were able to find the cash we needed to be able to invest in a program and then, you know, find the success. So the first month, I made about $1,000 profit. Second month, it was $6,000. And in the third month, I'd found a viral winning campaign. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm just explaining what happened through that period. And when I hit this viral campaign, I scaled it all through America, all around the world, into the UK, into Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. Had these shirts translated into different languages, and had made hundreds of thousands of dollars in a very, very small space of time. It didn't allow me to pay back everything to everyone, but it certainly allowed me to start getting back to a place where I was able to pay a significant amount of that back and be able to find a way to be able to pay everything back. And, you know, because I was able to come up with these ideas and there was a process behind it, I was finding that I was able to get a lot done in a lot less time, which brings me back to that inner desire or that inner belief that we shouldn't have to go to these 9-to-5s to create a job and a living that barely pays the bills. It was my first sign that, hey, this can be done. And just through that period, and being that I'm not sure if it's because I'm a carpenter and been through that process of learning a trade and logically thinking things through, but the step-by-step nature of it was obvious to me, and it allowed me to get the work done in the time that I need to get done, spend time with the family. At that time, I wasn't really into my health and fitness. I was at the heaviest I'd ever been. I was about 103 kilo at my heaviest, and but it gave me the freedom that I'd always wanted to do what I wanted to do in the time that I wanted to do it. I'm incredibly motivated when I am working, and I was and have been successful with it for quite a while now. But that's by the by, and that's not the reason why I'm creating this podcast. It's not to show how to do print on demand and get these results. Although if that's something you're interested in, we can certainly have a chat. But this is more about how other people have come through. So there's periods of time over the years where I found myself in, I don't think I've ever been depressed, but I would liken it to a sense of depression where I was not as motivated. I was not excited about the work I was doing. And I just knew that in order to reignite that flame, I had to surround myself with people who were getting after it and getting results in their own businesses. And so I started a men's business breakfast where we'd catch up once a month, and we'd throw a steak on the open fire, we'd grab a coffee, and for an hour we'd just chat with other fellas that are in business and crushing goals, that had that belief inside of them. And this is one thing that you will get from me too. Whilst I'm respectful of people's choices, I'm also aware of who I am and what it is I aim to achieve for myself and my family. And I know I'm a man, and I know with that drive, that inner drive, that desire to want to create and make money and provide for the family, my goal has always been to have that environment where I take care of the family financially and protect them, and my wife takes care of the family. And granted, she is a very, very intelligent woman, and I absolutely love her to death. She is absolutely incredible and knows how to run a business. She is very, very intelligent. But I want her to have that ability to choose what she wants to do, whether that's to take time away and just focus on the family, or she wants to do her own business. I 100% she has my support in that. But I want to show there is a very definite masculine and feminine role in our family. And I don't believe that I believe a lot of guys these days are having a hard time trying to find where they are in their own life, what their role is in their life, in their relationships. We have so much weird information coming at us day and night now. It's hard to know what's true, what's not. Very hard to form an opinion. And if you've got an opinion, it's very hard to double down and have full belief that you're correct. And even so, even if you do believe you're correct, you should always be open to have a conversation, have a discussion, have a heated discussion about it, and still be able to hold that belief. But when there's clear proof that you might be wrong, be humble enough to know that you're wrong and accept defeat and see that point of view or accept that information. I don't like to assume. I want to know from clear data and from my own experience what the answer to that is. Am I always right? Hell no. Am I going to have a go and find out if I am right? Hell yes. I don't want to assume. My boss, when I was doing an apprenticeship, he was very... the banter that you have when you're on a work site is ridiculous. And we used to always say, if people could listen to us right now, they would think we're smoking crack. It's just ridiculous. It's asinine rubbish that we're talking about. Anyway, there was this one quote that he'd always say, assumption makes an ass out of you and me. And I really lean into that. And the other quote, and you'll see or hear through this podcast quite a bit, that I'm a big fan of quotes. And my favorite one, and the one I tell my son in particular and my daughter, is the worst thing I could possibly be is just like anyone else. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger's quote, and I think it's so true. I believe that you have to be willing to stand out. You have to be willing to be pointed at and mocked and be made fun of, because it's in those positions that you can learn, that you can get connections with people you'd never been able to be connected with. You're interesting. People want to talk to you. And it leads to new opportunities that may not have been there if you were a wallflower and you didn't choose to put yourself out there. That's just one of my views, and that's what I live to. Like I said, I respect your choices as well. But I hope you enjoy the conversations that I'm going to have. I've always found different bits of people's lives so interesting. And when I'm talking to people that are doing incredible things, I just want to ask questions. I just keep asking questions because I get excited. And you're going to hear that through the conversations that I have, that I do get excited. You know, it's incredible, the energy that we share as people, particularly when, like, what's strange is that all the people that I've met around the world, I can have conversations with them on Zoom or in person, and the energy transference is no different. The only difference between the people that I meet online and those that I meet in life, particularly the ones I meet online, that I've only ever spoken to online, the only thing I'm learning about them when we meet in person is how tall they are. You know, because the banter has always been there. Like you learn that, you know, that there's energy even through conversation in text message. Sure, there's nuance missing, but for the most part, when there's energy like that, I used to get a coffee from a local coffee shop, and you'd know as soon as you walked into that coffee shop whether or not the chef was in a good or bad mood that day. Before you'd even seen them, before you'd even spoken to them. Energy, positive or negative, is shared. And this goes back to that business breakfast that I created for guys that are in business. That energy that you get from speaking with like-minded people is incredible. That positive energy. Every time I have been around guys that are absolutely crushing it, and girls, it leaves you with a sense of excitement, as does if you're around people who are negative and pulling you down and are drain and gossiping. There as well, you find that energy is shared, and it's just negative energy. So that's one thing I'm going to leave you with today. When you're meeting people, when you're talking to people, I encourage you to seek out those people who energize you. Have more conversations with them. And through this podcast and through the people that I'm going to interview, I hope that you get to share in that energy as well. And I really, truly hope that you subscribe and you find as much enjoyment in listening as I do in having these conversations. So thank you. If you're still here now, oh my God, thank you very much. I will listen to you. No, I won't. I'll be here on the next podcast. Until then, connect with me on socials. But thank you for listening. See ya.